Hi, and thanks for watching my guide to how I beat Whitewater Park, also known as Aqua Park if you play the game in the US. This scenario actually has all of the original Rollercoaster Tycoon games and scenery available either from the start or through research, so let's get going. The goal is 900 guests by the end of year 3, with that typical requirement of having a park rating at least 600. It's a large park with, as you'd expect, some water rides already built, so it's clear that the best way to develop this park is with non-water rides. Some park basics first though. We only have 2 staff members, so we will certainly need an extra mechanic. I'll look at the handyman later, as for now the rides aren't going to make the guests too sick. My next task is to check out the rides we already have, starting at the 2 log flumes where I maximise the number of boats in use, increasing the entry fee, and I've added on-ride photo sections to ensure these flumes were at their maximum earning potential. I then applied the very same treatment to the rapids and on the dinghy slide, although I can't have an on-ride photo section here. Next up, guests were complaining of being hungry, so in went a burger bar. The bumper boats weren't proving popular and boats were struggling to find their way back to the station, so I just demolished that ride. I also had guests complaining they couldn't find the park exit or certain rides they were heading for, so I built a path straight across the lake so guests didn't need to walk all the way around it. So 1 month in, and it's time to give these guests some new rides. First up, I went for a custom-built junior coaster. Given the nature of the rides currently in the park, I'm going to guess that guests prefer a more gentle experience, so I'll avoid the big, intense coasters for now. I put my station close to the new path over the lake to make it easy to connect the queue path later on. The coaster climbs straight out of the station before turning to descend over the lake and pass around the rapids, hopefully giving a boost to both rides' excitement rating, and then a small hill over the station allows me to bring the track over the path and back through its own track before dropping to the level of the lake to return to the station. You can see that took a few attempts to get right, but after a quick test run and the addition of a queue line, I returned these stats, which I'm very happy with, although the nausea rating does mean I'll need a handyman to patrol close to the exit. The park is still missing some toilets, so I added 2, one each side of the park, an information kiosk at the front, which I really should have done right away, a drink stand close to the burger bar, and finally a fruity ice stall near my new coaster. To increase my ride count, I added a twist, spiral slide, lakeside Ferris wheel, and then, 4 months in, the first big new coaster for the park, a classic wooden roller coaster. So I'm going to run through the construction very quickly, but this coaster climbs over the log flume before dropping and turning down towards the lake. A helix lifts it off the water before the ride turns 180 degrees and sets off around the Ferris wheel, coming back down under its track and then over its own track before returning towards the station. So let's test ride it. There's an annoying iOS Rollercoaster Tycoon Classic bug where the ride window doesn't actually display the ride, but you can see the train cruising over the tracks. I'm not a big fan of this colour, by the way, kind of ruins what probably would be a really nice lake. So the excitement is very high, intensity high, and nausea medium. I think this ride is ready for some guests. With quite a large park, I decided next to build a transport ride and a classic miniature railway to take the guests around the park. I started with a station near to the entrance, as you'd expect with transport rides at most real-life parks, and I then sent the track sticking close as I could to the park boundary, so not to reduce the space I have to build rides, although this is a pretty big park. With my full track complete, I looked for the best areas to add stations and initially settled for just 2 stations, although it will be easy to add new stations as the park expands. To one side of the park, where I have some flat railway track which I intend to turn into a station, there is a really good amount of land screaming out for a new ride. So that's going to be the home of the park's 3rd coaster, a looping roller coaster. So for the first time since I have returned to the game after all these years, I'm going to build this as a reverse launched coaster. Reverse launch coasters work by pulling the train backwards out of the station and then releasing, sending the train back through the station and along the track until speed is lost and the train returns back towards the station. Mine climbs out of the station, turning at the park limits and then descending down to a vertical loop in true Rollercoaster Tycoon fashion. The track then comes back through the loop until gravity stops it. So let's see the stats then. Another 6+ excitement, also high on intensity but medium on nausea. Perfect. Now, this new section of the park is going to need some other rides too. I'll start with a pirate ship down by the lake and a new station for the miniature railway. I've skipped the part where I connect it all back to the main park because I was just building path, but now I'll create a gap in the hill to build a new maze. You may have noticed I've now crept very close to the target of 900 guests, and it's only halfway through year 2. I've skipped ahead slightly to build my next ride, the go-karts, which will use some land near to the river rapids. I always build a long station to maximise the number of carts I can have, and building it on top of the hill allows me to descend slightly and take the track underground. Back onto the lake then, and time for another thrill ride there. For this launched freefall, I'm borrowing Escape Hatch from the build menu because it already comes with some good scenery, although I prefer to reduce the launch speed to keep the intensity under a little bit of control. Heading towards the end of year 2 now, and I am already ahead of the goal, but I don't want to be complacent, so I will continue to add new rides. This high flat area near where I built the go-karts is perfect for a few static rides, so a 3D cinema, haunted house and motion simulator will sit nicely here, and you didn't even have to watch me construct them. I'm on a roll with these static rides, and next up is a swinging inverted ship, and it's back to roller coaster construction for the final year. Initially this might seem a strange place for the station, and I know I'll need to work to get it back, but it means I can turn the ride across the path and descend into a decent sized area here. The compact nature of this ride means it will do well on excitement for getting close to its own track, and will likely also provide a boost to some nearby rides too. This might not be the greatest or most inspired coaster I will ever build, but it is going to be effective, and I've got it built fairly quickly. So, shall we test ride? And when the stats come in, job done. Let's add the queue and get guests on board. There's some nice space just behind the new corkscrew coaster to create another small area for static rides. So in goes a top spin and then dodgems and a link path underneath the new corkscrew. Skip ahead to July, and I've noticed my maze isn't proving at all popular. So let's swap it out for an observation tower, which if built high enough will clock in with a reasonable excitement rating. We already have the miniature railway hugging the park boundary, but let's add a chairlift across the lake to help guests make that journey from front to back a little bit more quickly. And in terms of how I beat, that's it. Quite literally, I sat back waiting for the end of October, and there it is. Scenario number 5 is complete. Thanks as always for watching, I really do appreciate it, and if you'd like to get more of my content on your feed, you know what to do.